Hey guys, Paul here, and today I figured we would take a look at this stuff. This here is spruce glue, spruce pitch. It's a type of primitive glue we can make using spruce resin, charcoal and plant fibres. In this case we're going to use bracken today. And what this is commonly used for is hafting arrowheads. It can also be used to haft knife blades, and it can also be used for making, decorative items, so jewellery and stuff like that, as well as sealing containers and all that sort of stuff. So today we're going to have a look at making this using primitive techniques and tools. I've already got the fire on behind me, so the next step is to go and identify some spruce and find some resin and show you what that looks like. So I'll give you a close-up of this stuff. It's like a very black, hard substance, and what you do with this is heat it over a fire and it's almost like thermoplastic, becomes gooey, and you can use it for smearing onto arrows, all that sort of stuff, and then once it dries it goes hard as a rock and sticks the two things together. So that's what it is we're going to be trying to produce today. Like I say, first thing is to go and identify some spruce and collect some resin. Okay, so before we get started we're going to need to collect some tools in order to be able to collect the resin. This here isn't spruce, this is a pine tree. You can tell that by the bark and stuff on it. You can use pine for collecting the resin for making this glue. However, I find that spruce is much easier. It seems to have a lower melting point and seems to hold a wee bit better, it's a wee bit more pliable. But what we've come to this tree for is to, as you can see, the bark is coming off. And all around it there's bits like this here, and what I want this for is just for collecting the resin on, so when we're digging it out of the tree I have somewhere to store it. If you put it in your pockets and it heats up it gets really messy, so I'd avoid doing that. So all this is for is just for collecting the resin on, that way we're not getting messy pockets or anything, and we have it all in one place. And for digging out the resin from the tree, I have this bone here, and as you can see it's kind of scooped, very hard, and that should work perfectly for digging into the tree to get the resin out. So now that we've identified some pine and we've got ourselves a little tray here for collecting our resin on, let's go and find a proper spruce tree and collect some resin. Okay everyone, so here we have a spruce tree. Has a very smooth bark compared to the pine. Again, you can use pine and collect the resin for that, for making this. This is pine bark here, and as you can see there's a very big difference. This is quite scaly whereas this is smooth. And the difference in the needles, I managed to collect some here, is that there's lots of needles tightly packed, and they're all individual. So that's an idea of the needles and the bark here. But what we're actually looking for is this stuff here, and I'll take you in a bit closer so you can see this. So here's a closer look at our spruce resin. As you can see, it's quite a yellow in colour. You'll find it either in yellow or white if it's fresh. Also the bark can grow over it, but you can still identify it because of the injury around the tree. And it's the injury that makes the tree produce this stuff. So something has come down here and hit this tree and gone through the bark into the wood, and what this tree has done is produced this resin to fill up the hole and stop itself from being infected. But luckily for us it produces so much that we can harvest some of this resin without doing any damage to the tree. As long as you don't go too deep and reopen the wound, you shouldn't have too much trouble. So I'll give you another look at the tool I'm going to use for this. This is just a bit of bone, and as you can see it's kind of scooped, and what we're going to do is just come in at the side and force our way in behind it and just sort of pry it out, and we'll collect that on our bit of pine bark. So I'll take you in at a different angle and I'll show you that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just collect the resin here using our tools. And again, like I said, we're going to be careful not to go too deep so that we injure the tree, but we're going to be able to take this top layer off of it, causing too much damage. So it's a case of just being careful with it. It is hard stuff, so you'll need to put a bit of force into it. And bits should come off. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but be careful and watch your fingers. And if you're doing this in a non-primitive sense, you would just use your knife and you would come in behind it. You wouldn't go straight in, because then you're going to go into the bark underneath, and that's going to damage the tree again and, you know, expose it to infection until it has time to heal. But as you can see there, we managed to collect a few bits, and that's kind of what we're looking for there, just little golden nuggets. So we'll go off and we'll collect a few more of those, and then we should have enough to make our glue. For me, I'd be looking for about a good handful to be able to make one of those glue sticks that I showed you earlier. So let's go and have a look and see if we can find some more. Okay everyone, so we're back at camp now. We have our spruce resin here, collected quite a few nice chunks, some big bits. And what we need to do next, while we've got the fire on and burning down to embers, is collect some of the charcoal from the fire. So I have a few bits and pieces here. And what we're going to do with this is just crush it down into as fine a powder as we can possibly make. And the way I like to do that is just to get 2 stones. So I'll collect 2 stones from the fire here. So I've got a stone here with a nice flat edge. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. And then another stone here for crushing it up. Just a nice flat edge on this bit as well. And the way I like to do it is just to sit with my legs out in front of me. Rest your stone there and get your charcoal, and all we're trying to do is just crush it up into as fine a powder as possible. So take your big hammer stone and just begin to work it and crush it around, and if you find any sort of impurities, remove them and carry on until you've got a nice pile. So we'll get started on that. I'll do this little bit for you. And all you're really doing is just putting it on, then sort of twisting and applying pressure, and that breaks it down. And what it's giving us is a really nice fine charcoal powder that we can use for mixing with our resin. So I'm going to process a wee bit more of that, and then I'll come back to you once we've got a nice pile. Okay everyone, so now we have our ingredients. We have our spruce resin, and we also have our charcoal here. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to climb into my pit. And as you can see, I've got a nice wee fire going here. But what we want to do is sort of move this fire out of the way and keep the embers. The fire is going to be a bit too dangerous for us to be poking about in, so what I'm going to do is just move all this sticks and stuff aside and leave the embers for us to use. And what we're doing here is just making a space where we can put in our rock. And what we want is a nice sort of flat rock, so I'm going to use the one we used for crushing up the charcoal here. And we want it to be nice and flat so that when we put our resin on it to melt it, it's not going to sort of fall off the sides and go into the fire. The resin is also extremely flammable, so when you get it burning, then it becomes a bit of a problem. So what we're going to do is put this rock in amongst these embers here, and the goal of that is to heat up this rock. It's important that you choose a rock that isn't porous or that's been sat in water for a good amount of time, because rocks are partial to blowing up, especially if they have air or water locked inside them. That expands with the heat, and that's what blows up a rock. So this rock's been by the fire for months and months now, so I know it's nice and dry, it's safe. What I'm going to do is place it in here and let it heat up. Making sure it's nice and stable and flat. You can move some of the embers in around it just to help it heat up. Just like that. And once that's heated up, I'll come back to you. Okay, so before we get started melting down our spruce resin, you're going to want to collect 2 sticks. One for stirring and one that the glue is actually going to collect on. As you can see, just a regular stick, and then you can finish it off with a bit of decoration at the end, or a lanyard hole. So just a nice clean stick, preferably dry, and just another one for stirring. So our rock should be heated up now, so we'll start putting some spruce resin on it and start mixing it all up. Okay, so our rock should be hot enough now. There's a nice heat surrounding it. I've got a few little sticks burning just to keep the embers going. And what we're going to do is just take one of our chunks of resin, and what we want to watch out for is bits of dirt attached to the resin, so like maybe little bits of bark, bits of stick maybe, and it's good to go through before you start melting it down and sorting that out, because it will create big bits in your glue, and they aren't too much of a problem, but they can be a wee bit of a hassle to try and dig out later on. So what we're going to do is just stick a few bits of spruce on a rock here, just a few of our bigger pieces, and then they should start melting down fairly quickly. Okay everyone, so you can see our resin starting to melt down here. The rock's not quite as hot as I anticipated, but it's getting there, and you can see how gummy it turns. And that's essentially what we're looking for. And we're just trying to get it all melted down so it's at the same sort of consistency. What it is you're looking for is, on the verge of being liquid, but still maybe a wee bit hard. And just takes a wee bit of time, especially on a hot rock. If you were doing this the non-primitive way, you would stick this in a can and put it over the fire in much the same way, and that would boil it all down nicely. You would have to be a wee bit more careful about what you're putting in the can, because it's a lot harder to dig bits of bark and stuff out. So we're going to leave this to keep doing its thing, and I'll come back to you once we're a wee bit further along. Okay everyone, so the pine resin started to melt, and as you can see it's changed colour here, and that's because as it starts running off, what I like to do is just take a little bit of my charcoal here and mix that in. What that does is help bring it all together into one sort of solid form. And there's still bits of resin in there that need to be melted yet. And the sort of ratio you want to go for is maybe you know, for about a third of the charcoal that you have of pine resin. So in terms of weight, you know, you want a third of what it is you have. So we're getting a nice pool here. And what we want to do next, before it starts running off, is getting our other stick, our clean stick that we're going to use for collecting all this stuff, and then spinning it in it, trying to get it all attached to it, and then taking it away from the fire and letting that dry. So as you can see, once it starts to dry, you can start moulding it with your hands. And then as the resin goes down, we just want to keep chucking more on. Just enough that you can handle without too much hassle. I'm having a wee bit of a problem with it running over the edge here, but that's not a big deal. You're bound to lose a wee bit. But once you have this initial little nub here, what you do is you come in and you just spin it round in the pine resin, and you can see it kind of builds up a layer. And then you take it out of the fire and let it cool down, so it'll go hard, and then you just carry on repeating that process. As this melts down, you know, we'll add more charcoal and we'll create more. And as I'm going along, what I like to do is just run it along my hands, and that kind of gives us that round shape and helps it all stay together. Okay, so once we've worked all our resin in, I don't really have much left anymore. Once we've done all that, we end up with this here. And this is pretty much the final product. What we want to do just now is just heat it over the fire and then smooth it out. And you have to be careful of your fingers, try not to burn yourself. And all this is really just to make it look pretty, I guess. And then, you know, once it's heated up, it should be okay for you to handle. And that just helps it all stay together in one place. And makes it look a bit better. And that's kind of what it is we're going for. So, doing it the primitive way, you're always bound to have a wee bit of you know, material loss. So, you know, some of your pine resin might not mix properly, or, you know, your charcoal won't be enough, or you'll put in too much. But it's a case of trial and error, and once you practice enough, you'll soon get the gist. So I'll take you outside and I'll show you the finished product. Okay guys, so here's our finished product. As you can see, we've got a nice bit of glue from that, and all we've done is just finish it off with a nice spruce lanyard there, spruce roots. We'll cover those in a future video. And what that allows you to do is just hang it off, you know, a branch inside the shelter or inside your pack or whatever. The only thing I would say to avoid is leaving them somewhere hot. The reason being, when they heat up, they become runny again, and they'll drip and stick to whatever it is they're touching. But we'll go over using these in a future video, you know, the method of attaching an arrowhead, for instance, and we'll cover that. But that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to just leave them down below, and yeah, that's going to do it. So thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all again soon.